One moment, folks.
This is a new day. This is a new day full of sound and light and expectation. This day has been waiting for you. This day has been waiting especially for you, to embrace you, to guide you. This day has been waiting with open arms just for you. This is the day we have been given. Not waste it. Come now and let us worship together. Good morning, everybody. My name is Reverend Joseph Boyd. It is my pleasure to welcome you into this beautiful sanctuary here at 1105 Elm Street in Youngstown, Ohio. We welcome everybody across the United States and across the world, from California to New York, to Colorado, to South Carolina, to the Dominican Republic, to Brazil. We welcome all of you into this sacred space. For over a century, this church has served the marginalized and the vulnerable, and that has always been the heart of its mission, to serve the community. And we are continuing that now through our virtual ministry during the 2020 pandemic. So again, welcome. I have a few announcements. Today at 12:30 p.m. during Summer RE, we will be learning about animals like sloths and aardvarks. The activity will be eating like an aardvark, without ants, of course. You'll need a straw and food small enough to go through the straw, preferably not a liquid because that would make it too easy, but yogurt would be excellent. And the link will be down in the chat box if you have any children who are watching, or if you know any children who are your neighbors, your grandchildren. Again, this is 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time after the service, so they're welcome to join in on that. This Tuesday at 1 p.m. on August 4th, there will be a participation in voter engagement from home. Even though many of us are staying at home, there are still ways to help make sure that people are voting in the upcoming general election. If you're interested in learning more about how to use text messaging and phone calling to engage voters, please plan to attend a Zoom meeting on Tuesday, August 4th at 1 p.m. If you'd like to get that link, please just put your name down in the chat box, and next to your name put weekly update, and we'll send you all the weekly updates with all the Zoom links for all these events. And then our last announcement is you can help be a part of worship if you'd like from home. This Wednesday at 7 o'clock p.m., that's August 5th, 7 p.m., we're going to be discussing next month's worship theme, which is renewal. So please join us to discuss what renewal means to you, what renewal means to your state, what you think renewal means for our world during this time. And these ideas will be compiled and used to plan worship for September. And as I said, you can also participate from home during the worship, for the worship service. And now I'd like to go to Amber in the Dominican Republic for our chalice lighting. Amber?
Good morning, everyone. When Michael Brown was killed, I had been living in Haiti for 6 years. His death was 4 years after the Haiti earthquake, which dramatically changed my life. So maybe it was this, or perhaps it was simply distance, that caused me to have such a different feeling about the Ferguson protests than other Americans. When I spoke with people living in the US, especially young people, they expressed how hard it was to be alive at such a difficult time. But for me, I remember feeling relief. Relief that the truth was being brought to light, that hard conversations were starting to happen, that white Americans like me were beginning to confront the lie that we bought into, the lie of white supremacy and the lie of the American dream. I heard truths long ago spoken by people like James Baldwin and Ruby Sales, things that I knew in my heart to be true and that stayed with me. That white people created whiteness and anti-Blackness because we don't know how to love ourselves or each other. And when we can figure out how to love and respect ourselves and each other, we'll no longer need our anti-Blackness. For the last 12 years, I've lived outside of American culture. I've lived between Haiti and the Dominican Republic, where I've been working with social movement leaders, people who inspire me, people whose lives are at risk for their work, and challenging existing power structures. People who are both fighting and building at the same time. While I have people of color all around me, many of whom I consider to be my own chosen family, I know that racism lives in me, that the mentality of domination that created racism, patriarchy, and even capitalism lives in me, because it was within these structures that I was born and raised, and from which I still reap the benefits. While the internal work of reckoning with racism in me is really hard, what's been even more difficult is recognizing that I've fallen into the trap that Black activists identify as the problem of the white progressive. I work hard at pointing out what is wrong, and I often have an extraordinary problem analysis. But I've failed to invest myself in building a culture of care, of building community. The beloved community that our late Congressman John Lewis committed his life to building, it calls to me, and it's here that I feel I have work to do, to build the beloved community where I can accompany others and they can accompany me on our journey toward wholeness, where we can work together toward ending the othering based on skin color, based on country of origin, based on who someone voted for in the last election. The community where together we can build a culture of care. That's the difficult work that I want to do. Since the birth of my daughter, I've been returning to Youngstown, my hometown, to visit family members several times a year. On these visits, I would attend the UUYO because the services inspired me as much as the activism. In March, I traveled to Youngstown unexpectedly, and because of the pandemic, I stayed until last week. There, as the George Floyd protests unfolded, I began to feel the pain that I didn't feel during the Michael Brown protests. It was a beautiful pain, a reflective pain. It was what I hope was a growing pain. I was so glad to learn that the UUYO was having services online. There I found groups that I could participate in and speak with ordinary people just like me who were grappling with this moment in their own ways. When I visited the UUYO in the past, I lamented that there was no way for me to stay connected when I was at home. But because of the pandemic, here I am connecting with you from Santo Domingo now. I come to you because I feel inspired by your work as a community and because you welcomed me. And with you, I hope that we can build the beloved community together wherever we are.
Please join me now in reciting the covenant which is in your order of service. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Our offering this morning, each month we give to an organization that supports the transformation of our community, which is at the heart of our mission. To our church's historic commitment to the well-being of our community, we give 100% of our daily offering to those in need. UUYO's giveaway plate recipient for August is the Christie House Emergency Shelter. The Christie House Emergency Shelter, or CHES, is the only shelter in the Valley which accepts men, women, and children without any restriction. CHES is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and provides a safe place to sleep with meals. CHES serves over 600 people per year and turns away over 400 people a year because we are full. We attempt to place our tenants in permanent housing with a success rate of 51%, whereas the state requires 30%. Our cost per night is only $26, which is far cheaper than hotel costs. Due to the COVID-19, we have had to make adjustments in our spacing, as chess only half of the normal 36 beds can utilize. We work with the Trumbull County Collaborative and utilize a hotel for women with children and the elderly. We are funded by the state of Ohio, Trumbull County Mental Health and Recovery Boards, and United Way. We will now receive that offering that supports the life of Youngstown, the Mahoning Valley, and our wider world.
Come round by my side and I'll sing you a song. I'll sing it so softly it'll do no one wrong. On Birmingham Sunday the blood ran like wine, and the choirs kept singing of freedom. That cold autumn morning no eyes saw the sun, and Addie Mae Collins, her number was 1. An old Baptist church, there was no need to run, and the choirs kept singing of freedom. The clouds, they were gray, and the autumn winds blew, and Denise McNair brought the number to 2. The falcon of death was a creature they knew, and the choir kept singing of freedom. The church, it was crowded, but no one could see that Cynthia Wesley's dark number was 3. Her prayers and her feelings would shame you and me, and the choir kept singing freedom. Young Carol Robertson entered the door, and the number her killers had given was 4. She asked for a blessing, but asked for no more, and the choir kept singing of freedom. On a Birmingham Sunday, a noise shook the ground, and the people all over the earth turned around, for no one recalled a more cowardly sound, and the choirs kept singing of freedom. The men in the forest, they once asked of me how many blackberries grew in the blue sea. I asked them right back with a tear in my eye, how many dark ships in the forest. The Sunday has come and the Sunday has gone, and I can't do much more than to sing you a song. I'll sing it so softly it'll do no one wrong, and the choir kept singing of freedom. Yes, the choir kept singing of freedom.
Please join me for meditation.
The following readings are taken from The Warmth of Other Suns by Isabel Wilkerson, and they are the epigraphs to chapters in her book. This one, main epigraph by Richard Wright. I was leaving the South to fling myself into the unknown. I was taking a part of the South to transplant in alien soil, to see if it could grow differently, if it could drink of new and cool rains, bend in strange winds, respond to the warmth of other suns, and perhaps to bloom. Part 1's In the Land of Our Fathers is taken from Mahalia Jack and moving on up. Our mattresses were made of corn shucks and soft gray Spanish moss that hung from the trees. From the swamps, we got soup turtles and baby alligators, and from the woods, we got raccoon, rabbits, and possum. The next reading is by David Cotto, God Shakes Creation. Leaving. This land is first and foremost his handiwork. It was he who brought order out of primeval wilderness. Wherever one looks in this land, wherever one sees that is the work of man, was erected by the toiling, straining bodies of Blacks. Wallace Stevens, they fly from the land that bore them. And from a colored woman in 1902, in our homes, in our churches, wherever 2 or 3 are gathered, there was a discussion of what is best to do. Must we remain in the South or go elsewhere? Where can we go to feel the security which other people feel? Should we go in great numbers or only in several families? These and many other things are discussed over and over.
Oh, very young, what will you leave us this time? You're only dancing on this earth for a short while. And though your dreams may toss and turn you now, they will vanish away like your dad's best jeans. Denim blue fading up to the sky. And though you want him to last forever, you know he never will. You know he never will. And the patches make the goodbye harder still. Very young, what will you leave us this time? There'll never be another chance to change your mind. And if you want this world to see a better day, will you carry the words of love with you? Will you ride the great white bird into heaven? And though you want to last forever, you know you never will. You know you never will. And the goodbye makes the journey harder still. Oh, very young, what will you leave us this time? You're only dancing on this earth for a short while. Oh, very young, what will you leave us this time?
I've been grateful for a bit of rain we had in Youngstown, Ohio. It's reminded me of my undergraduate days in Portland, Oregon, a place that has now garnered worldwide attention for protesting and the presence and retrieval of federal troops. It has been quite strange to see places I know intimately be put on the world stage for reasons I never would have been able to predict. It's strange to see a line of moms and dads with leaf blowers facing federal troops, and remember with fondness that if you went just 2 blocks down from the protest, you would be able to get one of the best donuts in your life until 2 a.m. It was strange, and knowing the visceral sense of walking around Greenwood, where Black Wall Street once stood, and the BOK Center, where Jennifer and I protested inside a bank 4 years earlier due to their funding of an oil pipeline. In a few short years, eastern Oklahoma is now reclaimed as indigenous land. I feel a sense of awe when I think of these rapid changes, juxtaposed with my lived experience that even 10 or 5 years ago seems like a very different time. The unpredictability of what is most startling. I never would have been able to guess that the widest major city in the United States would become the epicenter for the Black Lives Matter movement. I never would have guessed that national sports leagues, including Major League Baseball, arguably the most American of sports, would begin their season with the New York Yankees and the Washington Nationals intentionally taking a knee in unison for 30 seconds before the national anthem on opening day and staying there in protest, in solidarity, through the national anthem. I couldn't help but wonder what Jackie Robinson would have thought and felt during that moment. A man who broke the color barrier and endured insults from fellow players and fans throughout his entire career. He died in 1972, just as it looked like the civil rights movement in all its glory was finished. His widow, Rachel Robinson, at 98, announced the beginning of the Dodgers season this year. It wasn't just Jackie who had endured all those years. Rachel told of numerous death threats, how terribly lonely Jackie felt, and how she felt, and how she watched various pitchers intentionally hit him while at bat, so that they could try to injure him for the entire season. Of course, this was before any cohesive movement, national or global. She felt at the time it was just him and her versus the entire world that was working toward their defeat. In a moment when it seemed that Jackie was about to implode due to not being able to eat or stay in the same accommodations as the white teammates and constant violence on and off the field, it was Rachel who told Jackie what was at stake. She said, quote, "The issue wasn't simply baseball, but life and death, freedom and bondage for a lot of people. They formed their own team to navigate not just their life, but life as we know it today. It makes me think that nothing is just simply what it is on the surface. It's not simply baseball. Each action we take seems to be some pointer towards something that is beyond itself. It is very simple, and in that simplicity, there is much more than we can ever understand. I think about having lived in places that are shaping not just a national, but global conversation on what it means to be a person during these times. Conversations about the role of the people, the role of government, conversations about the simple, everyday decisions we live out. I've been thinking of how difficult it is to move this world collectively as a we, while still very much feeling as an I. This tension is not new, but this tension is reaching new heights as our national death toll is now 150,000, and we have no real system in place as a country to curb or prevent the spread of this virus. In a season where movement feels most natural, many are traveling across states, and now through contact tracing are seeing the repercussions of this very natural impulse. It is startling to see the world we've related to in a particular way no longer make sense in the world that we now inhabit. Of course, the nature of the world is change. So we will not be in this predicament exactly like this forever, but we are in it now, even though we are ready for it to be over. It's not. Again, I'm probably not telling you something you already don't know, but sometimes it's helpful to hear someone outside your own head state the obvious. This pandemic does not seem to be improving for those in the United States as a whole. Even if certain parts of the country are seeing a decrease in daily cases, there are other areas that are seeing their largest numbers to date. Again, this may seem obvious, but sometimes saying the obvious can be helpful. If one part of the country is seeing a rise in cases, the rest of the country is also in trouble. The reason for this is also obvious, but it's taking us much longer to understand. What happens in one state impacts the entire nation, and what happens in one nation impacts the entire globe. In the same way that we don't exist as completely separate, autonomous beings, our states are not separate and autonomous, though many act like it is. Much of the loneliness in the West is a delusion that we can live and make choices autonomously, as if these choices don't impact the entire world. Again, this is obvious, but it's taking us so much longer to truly digest this. The divide we see today is not really about religion or where we live in this country. The divide today is not even about political parties or whether you support protesting racism. The divide we see today is not about wearing masks or whether it is appropriate to bring firearms to a public event. The divide we see today is not about the people versus the government, protesters versus the police, blue states versus red states. These are all just surface symptoms of a much deeper divide that we are given the precious opportunity during this time to uncover. The divide we see today is not about all the things we see filling the news machine on a daily basis. All of these stories are just symptoms. The divide comes down to a fundamental understanding of who we are as an I and a we. The divide is not about choosing one or the other. The divide is recognizing the I in the we, of respecting individual conscience and agency that always exists in a context of mutuality, mutual pain, mutual disease, mutual liberation, mutual hope. Our task, as I see it, is not to pick a side of I or we, but to courageously awaken to navigating this divide by learning what it means to be both, to live both with humility and integrity. We are an individual, and we are a part of a community. No two people will live the exact same life and make the exact same choices. It would be ridiculous to enforce this. But one thing that is happening now that is truly astonishing, and that is a public, lived, and outspoken debate about what is the common good and what actions lead to the common good. You will have those who will lean on the side of individual free choice as being the ultimate good. And you will have those who will say whatever sacrifices we make for the collective good is what is best for the individual. No side is right 100% of the time. To recognize this is to liberate us. To recognize there is a place for individual choice that is about life and death. And there is the reality of life and death for our entire species that is all about you as an individual. To see and respect this is to transform our ideas of who we think we are and what we're doing here. I aim to follow the recommendations of our health officials, to avoid crowds, to wear a mask in public and keep physical distance. But I've also attended protests, sometimes with hundreds of people, and I've tried my best to keep these guidelines, but I've not done it perfectly. I made an individual choice that deviated from what I normally would do because I felt within reason that the risk was justified. I'm not saying this is fundamentally correct or even reasonable. What I'm saying is all of us are being asked to navigate this divide between our individual choice and calculate the cost and benefit of that choice toward the collective good. And this is a new awareness for most of us. Human behavior is not driven by scientific data or what is best for us as a species. If that was the case, we probably wouldn't eat as much meat, pollute our own home, or do work that wastes our true abilities so we can have stuff that we like. We are driven not by data, but by our values. If we are unsure of what our values are, studying our behavior can show us. Which is why many find it kind of funny to attend church, especially in this day and age, but it actually makes perfect sense. We are driven by what we value, and we do have some agency in choosing and living out those values, albeit imperfectly. If the life of our species and our planet and our own individual well-being all hinges on what we value, I think it's a good idea to find out what we truly value. What are we alive for? What are we willing to risk our life for? And what seems irrelevant or short-sighted? The best part of my job at a unique church like this is though I offer you an example of values and share with you my own recommendations, I'm not in charge of what you value or what you don't. You get to decide for yourself as an individual in the context of a community like this. This doesn't mean you get to believe whatever you want, however. We say in our covenant every Sunday, service is our law, and we aim to seek the truth in love. We encourage freedom, seeking truth with accountability, which is love. Right now, as a nation, we are seeing with prowess the great strength of individual freedom and unavoidable public accountability. We are being tasked to navigate this divide with more care, consideration, and thoughtfulness than we've ever had to. Of course, it looks clumsy and horrible on a mass scale. But my hope is that for certain individuals, this will be a period of growth, navigating the divide of what we want and what the world needs. Many African Americans traveled up north, following the passage of Jim Crow laws, seeking the warmth of other suns. There was the promise that different soil would sprout different fruit, and that a different land could help shape the destiny of an individual in a way that no other land could. Many came to cities like Youngstown, New York, Portland, Oregon, seeking a different kind of warmth, where there was more freedom and different understanding of normal community behavior. They came seeking more than jobs. They sought lives they could call their own, children who would know what it felt like to grow up with a sense of opportunity and imagine a much wider and bigger world. We are undergoing a great migration today with our borders closed to other nations. We are being asked to migrate from I to we and back to I. We are being asked to live as migrants, never staying stuck to our old identity of you and me and us and them. And my true life is in migration, back and forth, every day, for the rest of my life. There is no such thing as just baseball. there is so much more going on. There is so much more that each of our actions will contribute to our understanding of you and our understanding of me. We are building a whole new identity right now. And for those who refuse, the identity is cracking under our feet and leaving shards on the streets for federal troops to pick up. We are a living embodiment of so much more than we ever imagined. A living example of freedom. Freedom from bondage, including the bondage of I and the bondage of you. The sun that was sought decades before is finally warming, and we are now seeing in the place where we are a different kind of fertile soil emerge, a soil that has the potential to grow a different kind of person. And in that person is a whole other world, a world that has finally just arrived for us to live into. Please pray with me. Spirit of love, we are grateful for this day in Youngstown, Ohio, this rainy, cool respite. We offer a blessing for all those who are listening across the United States, who are undergoing different lockdown measures or lack thereof. We pray for the healing of violence in this nation. We pray for the healing of greed and for values that lead us not to our best selves, but to our destruction. We pray for the willingness to reassess what we value this day and in all days going forward, so that we might live in alignment with what we truly value and what will help us live. All this we pray. Amen.
Oh, the time will come up when the winds will stop and the breeze will cease to be breathing, like the stillness in the wind for the hurricane begins, the hour that the ship comes in. And the seas will split and the ship will hit and the sands on the shoreline will be shaken. Then the tide will sound and the wind will pound and the morning will be brave. Oh, the fishes will laugh as they swim out of the path, and the seagulls, they'll be smiling, and the rocks on the sand all will proudly stand, the hour that the ship comes in. And the words that are used for to get the ship confused will not be understood as they're spoken, for the chains of the sea will have busted in the night and be buried on the bottom of the ocean. Oh, a song will lift as the mainsail shifts, as the boat drifts on to the shoreline, and the sun will respect every face on the deck, the hour that the ship comes in. And the sand will roll out a carpet of gold for your weary toes to be touching. And the ship's wise men will remind you once again that the whole wide world is watching. Oh, the foes will rise with the sleep still in their eyes, and they'll jerk from their beds and think they're dreaming, but they'll pinch themselves and squeal, and they'll know that it's for real, the hour that the ship comes in. Then they'll raise their hands, say we'll meet all your demands, but we'll shout from the bow, your days are numbered. For like Pharaoh's tribe, they'll be drowned in the tide. Like Goliath, they'll be conquered.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we keep in our hearts until we meet again.
As you depart, please remember the one great fact. You are loved and never truly alone.
Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up to freedom land. I ain't gonna let no injunction turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let no injunction turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up to freedom land. Ain't gonna let no hatred turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let no hatred turn me around. Ain't gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up to freedom land. Ain't gonna let no racism turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let no racism turn me around. But keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up to freedom land. Ain't gonna let injustice turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let injustice turn me around. Gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up to freedom land. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let injustice turn me around. Gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up to freedom land.